Welcome to The Graveyard. Today's guest is an incredibly talented writer, actor, director, and producer. He's known for roles in things like Orange is the New Black and The Blacklist, but more recently he's known for writing, directing, acting, and producing his own film, Things Like This. So please, everybody help me welcome the one and only Max Talisman. Hi, Max.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm so good. Now,
Good.
when people listening to this, it's probably going to be in February and we're all fucking done with the holidays, but
Sure.
you look
But right
so
now, clearly, I'm
festive and adorable. I love
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. Yeah. I'm full Jewish, like on every side, going back very, very far back, like as far back as you can trace it. But my family on my mom's side always celebrated Christmas because, like, what else are you gonna do? And by celebrated, I don't mean like the religious aspects. I just mean we got together and we gave gifts, and night we all made appetizers, which is really fun. And so, yeah, so I love Christmas in terms of just being like this like festive, like beautiful time. Obviously, it's not a religious thing to me, but respect all who it is. Everyone,
I
like,
don't think it's really
yeah,
religious for that many people, to be fair. Like, I'm not religious, so I
sure,
can't say, but like,
sure.
I want to say 90% of people that celebrate Christmas are probably not sitting there thinking about
That's
the
fair. I
religious
knew people when I was
aspect.
younger who would go to church with their families during Christmas, but less so as an adult. But it is just Christmas is festive and beautiful. And also, when we're filming this, I know this is going to come out in like February, March, whatever, but it's the seventh night of Hanukkah. So happy Hanukkah to
Happy
everyone.
Hanukkah, everybody. Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. There's so much going on in the world. And I think the one thing that I love about Christmas is that everyone hits pause and just
Oh, yeah.
spends it with the people that they love. And that to me
Yeah.
is like, whether it's religious or whatever it is, you get a minute where everything kind of stops. Everyone gets to be with family and
Totally.
friends or your chosen family or whoever
Right.
they want to be
Yeah.
with. But I think that's beautiful.
I totally agree. I remember a few years ago when it was COVID and everything was shut down, I was unable to go home and see my family. And I was here in LA with people who mattered to me. And it was a difference because, like, chosen family is such a special experience, and it's different and it's beautiful and it's lovely. And I know a lot of people in our community, it's extremely important in our community. So I was very excited to get to spend it with my chosen family instead of my biological family for 1 year.
Oh, chosen family. I think that's something good and maybe something we can talk about because it
Yeah.
hasn't been talked about too much on this podcast yet. And obviously, with a lot of queer listeners, chosen family is something that's so important to us. It's something that
Yeah.
is so important to me.
Yeah.
My family growing up was very kind of scattered. My mom had moved away from where majority of her side of the family lives, which is like
Sure.
Ontario, Canada, back east.
Sure.
And so we weren't very connected at all throughout growing up. So it was just me
Yeah.
and my mom. My dad was out of the picture. He's an addict. And that whole side of his family is really scattered too. So
Sure.
when I came out as queer and as me and my mom's relationship got kind of tumultuous, chosen family became everything to me. It was like
Yeah.
all that I had. That was my support. And for a lot of
Totally.
queer people, especially in the States now, we hear stories of youth having their families turn their back on them all the time. And that chosen family can really save a
Mhm.
lot of people's lives.
Absolutely. I think we're talking about in our community, especially. I think it's vital that you find your people, and like even if, like, I am so lucky because I have a large family. They're all back east, kind of located around the DC area. But my family is all like, we're still very close. I text my twin sister every day. Like, I talk to my brother almost every day. My mom texts me every night or calls me. My dad. Long story short, I'm very close to my family, cousins included. But being all the way out here in on the West Coast in LA by myself, I've had to also create a family here because a support system, not only like in our community, but also in a profession where you feel alone a lot of the time. Like, it's become very, very, very important to have friends who like are my family, who are people who I know I can count on in any situation. It was cute actually because so my parents were gonna go to New York to see 2 Broadway shows this weekend. Fortunately, they can only go to see one because of some family stuff, health issues. And my dad had said to me, he was like, "Well, you can give the tickets on to Saturday night to a friend who's like family to us." So it was sweet.
Aw,
It's one of my close friends who my parents love, and they were very, very happy that she's gonna go and get to see the show. And it's just not. I mean, I'm lucky to have that support system, but also I'm conscious enough to recognize it's, if not the norm, it's still extremely, extremely lucky. And I'm once again, I'm just blessed. But once again, chosen family can be just as much as as a given family. Like you were talking about your circumstances in your family. And at the end of the day, that base that you had was probably not going to be as strong as something you ended up creating for yourself, which is much stronger with the people you love.
totally. And I think that there's a lot of pressure on having relationships with
Mhm.
your given family. And I think that there's like this narrative that we deal with where even if somebody's toxic or mistreating you, and I'm not saying that my entire family was like that, but just in a
Sure.
general sense, if you're being put into places where you feel unsafe or you're being disrespected or God forbid abused in some way, like
Yeah,
those aren't relationships that you should have to go and nurture or try to work through. If
totally.
there's something where both parties want to be better people and try to communicate and come together, that's one circumstance. But
Yeah,
just because somebody is your mom or your dad or your aunt or your uncle or whatever it is, if they are not there to respect you and love you for who you are, then
absolutely.
find that chosen
It's
family.
exactly, exactly. I completely agree. And luckily in once again in my family, I've felt supported enough, not like not only just supported, but able to have the tough conversations if I need to.
Hmm.
And able to, if someone's mistreating me, speak up and be like, this is how I feel and this is how we're gonna work on it. But you're talking about people removing themselves and maybe going no contact or being able to escape toxic situations. And I think luckily, things like TikTok and other internet sources where people see healthy, wonderful people who have done that to their toxic family, their toxic friends, whatever it may be, toxic relationship. And it gives them a safe space to know that, like, if it's a necessary escape, if it's a necessary situation, there are people who will love you and support you. And I'm grateful to the internet for that because I mean, even yesterday, I saw a video about a young girl who was, and by young girl, I mean she was probably 21. I'm 30 now, so that's a young girl.
It is still young. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's young.
We're young too.
But oh yeah, we are. But that's like a young woman, right? So a
Yes.
young woman, and she escaped her toxic family, and was about how she had escaped and all the steps she had to do. And first off, so proud of her for doing that. And I'm just a stranger on the internet.
Hmm.
But it's awesome to see someone stand up for themselves and make the changes in their life that are necessary. But the second thing is how important it is for someone else who's struggling to see that, see the steps she took, and realize that if that's something they need to do, there's always a course of action if they need to.
Totally. And I think
Yeah,
that's the importance of representation and also the importance of being brave and telling your story. Just like this
totally.
podcast is based around
Yeah.
sharing stories of bravery, overcoming adversity. And sometimes that adversity is in your own family. And
Yeah.
I filmed, I don't know where these are going to line up, but I was filming with Alicia Silberg yesterday.
Hmm.
And me and her have shared a lot of stories about our families. And I don't know if you know who she is. She's this incredibly inspirational AI tech wonderlord
Sure. Sure.
of the AI industry right now. But
Yeah.
her book Unemployable just shares her story, and in reading that, there was so much adversity that she overcame, but a lot of that came from within her family and
Totally.
overcoming those boundaries. And for
Yeah.
me right now, my relationship with my mom is not in a healthy place. So I've chosen to end communication between us a few months ago for while I think that this is right, and that might change in the future, it might
Totally.
not, but right
And
now,
also it's you made the best decision for your mental health at this moment. You're right. If that changes in 6 months and you're like, I want to try again, there's no judgment in that because that's the right decision for you in that moment.
totally.
Your mental health then. And once again, I think having access to these conversations it's so healthy. And the more that we're able to use the language to explain these feelings and these necessities, it's only going to help relationships grow. Um,
100%.
so at some point, someone will have the exact language to say what they need to say to the person who, they're speaking to at them. You
And
know what I
you're
mean?
totally. And
Yeah,
your
yeah.
chosen family also
Yeah.
teaches you how
Oh,
you
totally.
can be treated because
Yeah.
before, like with my partner, his family is God, just unfucking believable. Like I've never met
Mhm.
parents that were more involved in allyship and love
Mhm.
and understanding and compassion. Like, honestly, having them now as a part of my family, I consider a massive privilege. But also in having them
Yeah.
as part of my family and seeing how they show up and how they respect and how they take time to be educated and understand and really just like
Mhm.
show up in the best
Yeah.
way, knowing how me and my partner both receive love and the type of people we are, it teaches you. And then you're like, okay, well, I know how I deserve to be loved. I know how I
Yeah.
receive love. And my
Mhm.
own family isn't doing that right now. And I can look at what's healthy in my life and what's unhealthy and
Yeah.
prioritize my mental health and make that decision.
Yeah. Totally.
How
And
was
that's
your family when you came out? Were they immediately supportive?
yeah, I couldn't have been more supportive and just lovely. And I remember because I came out when I was a freshman at school, and it was literally like a week after they had dropped me off. Maybe not even, might have been like 3 days. And they had gone to like my family lake house. And the first thing I did was I called my twin sister because it's a twin thing is like always there. It's like a partnership from the moment you're born. And so I felt it would be, even though they're my parents, it would be wrong not to tell my twin sister first, which
I
is
think that's fair.
yeah, it's like it's hard to explain unless you feel it. But yeah, and so I told my twin sister, and then I think I told my brother only because I knew as soon as I told my mom, my brother would know. So that's totally valid. She can share that. But yeah,
Was she just excited? She's like, "Yay."
I don't think it was that. I think it's just she wanted to be vocal with how supportive she was. And it was so I sat like on Skyping with them, or if Zoom didn't exist in the day. So the Skyping with them, and I'm struggling to say it. I'm like, I don't know how to say this. I don't know how to like get the words out. And I was like, I can't. And my mom's like, just say like, I'm gay. Which, by the way, my parents had no clue I was gay. So I do believe that was like this weird little psychic moment between me and my mom that was
Aw.
her help. Like she just had to help. Like something gave her the initiative in that moment. And I was like, that's it. And she was like, really? And I was like, yeah. And my mom just went, so? And that was the end of that conversation. And my dad too, because he was there. My parents are still married and luckily, I mean, they're in love, which is really, really special. But
Aw.
speaking on that, that night I was texting my mom and she was saying that she went up to my dad and was saying, I'm so grateful and appreciative for how you handled the conversation today. And my dad was like, well, what else would you expect? He's my son. I love him no matter what. And my mom texted me saying, that's how you married the right person over 25 years later, which was
Oh,
just
oh
like
my
this
God.
little added moment to the day that was just beautiful and sweet. But I was lucky. I had experiences like that throughout my family. The first time I went home from college was for my cousin's bar mitzvah, and my uncle pulled me aside, who's like it was his son's bar mitzvah, and he pulled me aside just to say, like, just so you know, you're so loved by this family, and like nothing has changed that, which
Oh,
was also important because his daughter came out about like 8 years later. She's much younger than me. And I was able to tell her that story because it had meant so much to me. Um,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, yeah. So
This beautiful. What a fucking Christmas miracle.
I mean, it really was. It was like just I that is one part of my life that I'm so grateful my family has never not been there for me. And I'm not saying they haven't been there for me and they're there for me in every way, but I my dad worked under Bill Clinton like years ago. He's extremely like in terms of politics liberal.
Mhm,
And so is my mom and so were my grandparents on both sides and my cousin, but you never know. And there's
mhm.
always that fear. And years later, my mom had said to me, "Why didn't you come out earlier? Because you knew we'd be okay with it." And I had to be clear that it was, I wasn't ready, right? Like, it doesn't matter if logically I know my parents would be okay with it. If I'm not okay with myself, if I haven't done the work to get to that point, it's not time.
Totally,
Um,
and we're talking about the '90s. Like, we grew up in the '90s, and
yeah.
it was a very different time growing up in the
Oh,
'90s and
yeah.
early 2000s. Like,
Yeah.
we're still not really seeing any queer
Right.
representation at the time. Gay males were being completely thrown under the bus and accused of being child predators if they were teachers. Like, there was
Yeah.
a lot of what the trans community is going through now was what the gay community was going through in the '90s, and I relate a lot of that
Yeah.
back to like where movements are. We're kind of at like a parallel with what was happening there at that time shift. So I think
Yeah.
trying to come out and feel confident about yourself, it was still a different time. Even if your family's
Yeah.
extremely supportive,
Right.
there's still
Well, I
that
mean,
internal dialogue.
I came out in 2012. I was 19 at the time, and there were no other gay kids in my high school at the time. Like, it wasn't like I was surrounded by openly queer kids or like even kids who were having those conversations. And once again, I don't think it mattered what area you were from. I was from right outside of DC, which in America is one of the most liberal areas in the world, like, or in the country. I said in America
Yeah.
in the world. So that's the problem with
Same.
Americans, right? Like with US people. Mhm. So there we go. But no, I think it wasn't that I didn't think it would be accepted when it was time. It was just I didn't have the language. I didn't have the knowledge. And I was hanging out with these people who are 23 a few weeks ago. And I just felt like their language for that stuff is more evolved than
Mhm.
mine at that age.
Well, and mental
And
health, like,
yep, totally.
so
Yeah,
evolved. I
yeah.
saw one of my friends post on her story. She goes, I was walking past an elementary school and I
Mm.
heard two kids, and one of them said to the other, I think you need to go and take a mental health break or something like that. And these kids were like 5 or 6. And she's like, honestly,
I
I know
love.
that maybe wasn't being used in the right context with them, but the fact that there's language and
Yeah,
even awareness there of like, maybe you
totally.
should go take a mental health break. It's wild
Amazing.
compared to what we
Amazing.
were.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I don't think that even exists to, yeah, people our age in the workforce today. I don't think they're allowed mental health breaks. So
No. And
no.
that's something I think that is another conversation topic, and especially something we can kind of segue into your work with,
Oh yeah.
because your work is so incredibly inspiring and you're so incredibly talented. You've done so much now, but you saw a massive gap in what was happening with the industry and you had to write yourself into it. And I'm curious
Yeah.
how, before you came to that realization, were you struggling, and how did you keep yourself in a mentally healthy spot while feeling discriminated against
Sure.
in the industry that you had been working your entire life in?
That's a tough, tough question, but I think support. I mean, we've talked about support systems. I was just lucky to have amazing friends and my family, and they really were the ones who pushed me to create. And the person who pushed me to like sit down and start writing was my acting coach, Amelia Campbell, who I love so much. If Amelia's watching this, I love you. But she was like, "You are a writer," because just the way I would act, I would create stories and I would find where this character was from and all of that stuff just by using creativity. And I'm ever since I was born, I'm an extremely creative human. I was writing from the age I was 3, and my mom would encourage me. Like, I think she saw she had a creative child, and she's like, okay, more, more, more. And my mom had a theater degree from Northwestern, but a master's in early childhood development. And the reason why was she loved how creative and free young children were. And I was already naturally creative. So I'd be walking around and she'd be like, tell me how your story starts. And she would just write it down. Whatever I said, whatever old goop came out of my mouth, right? She just started writing it down. And that was, as the years went on, I did kind of through high school and into college go back towards acting. But after college, I was in New York and I was working as an actor for a few years. And you're right, there was this lull. And it was a lull in the industry. It was a lull with the people I was working with, my reps at the time. And I ended up kind of not totally by my choice, but cleaning house with who I was working with other than my manager, who at the time had been with me since I was 14. And I love her too. So Jody, if you're watching, I love you, even though we are no longer working together in that capacity. I do love you. So I really I started writing this TV thing, and it was just important for me to start writing. And that TV thing was closer to my actual life. The character's name was Max, and his friends were very much based on my friends. And I think starting at a place that felt very comfortable to me. Then when I was a year after I had started writing that, Things Like This was born. And I had been watching a lot of romantic comedies, and there just wasn't anything in this space that felt queer, but also felt universal.
Mm-hmm.
Felt like this space of like covering the two of, yes, we are two in the movie gay men falling in love, but this is a love story and love is universal.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like at the time, it was before a lot of the romantic comedies of past years have come out, but it was really just like Love, Simon and Alex Strangelove and these very teen-centered stories about coming out and
Mm-hmm.
all of that. But even now at this point, this film is in a very specific space that I still haven't seen of just a love story between two men where their sexuality isn't the point of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really important to me. I wanted to tell a romantic comedy where sexuality wasn't a gay romantic comedy, a queer romantic comedy, where sexuality wasn't my whole plot, my whole point, right?
Totally. And it's something that is in majority of, I think, any queer representation right now is it's either made because they're queer and that's the whole focus, or there's like maybe a token queer person in the corner.
Sure. No, that's true. And we've done a few screenings of the film, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive, but my agents came to one, and obviously I've been on strike for the last 8 months as an actor, part of SAG, but now that we're getting back to work, I was able to get lunch with my agent this week, and she said to me, she was like, after seeing the movie, she was like, it's such a beautiful film. She was like, we love it. The other agents at the company love it, but she was like, we're trying now to not just pitch you as a character actor. She was like, we want to push you also for leading roles and create that space for you.
Amazing.
And I almost cried because it was exactly what I had set myself off to do in 2017. And here I am in 2023 after COVID and after this strike. And that's the conversation I'm having. It was such a blessing. And I feel very lucky to be working with people who believe in me in that way. But
what a beautiful story of you too, because so if you don't know, Max has written, directed, produced, and acted in an upcoming movie that has yet to be released, but I was lucky enough to be able to get the pre-release version to watch with my partner Cass for a date night. And I think that the fact that you wrote yourself in. You're like, look, I'm not being cast in this. I'm being discriminated against. So I'm just going to say, fuck the system. I'm going to write my own character. I'm going to make the movie. I'm direct the movie, produce the movie, put it out there so that
Yeah.
I have a place in where I know I belong. And
Yeah.
that is fucking incredible. That is kicking down doors
Thank you.
and taking no
Yeah.
shit. And
Yeah.
it's inspiring. And I think that a lot of not just queer people, a lot of people in everyday life see what they think is a wall and they feel defeated by it. They allow themselves to just say, okay, like I'm not worthy of this space or I'm not here. And that's something that we need to teach ourselves is like, yes, we are. There is a
Yeah.
way to get through it. And if you have to, you will write yourself into your own fucking story. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what you did.
Yeah.
And it's so inspiring. It's so
Yeah.
incredibly brave. And yeah, I'm
Well,
just
after
grateful
all
you
of this,
did.
I still see myself as an actor first, and that's why I started this. And I am so proud of what we created, but you're right. It doesn't happen unless you are kind of a fighter mentality, unless you just every time you get knocked down, you just start punching again. And
Mm.
luckily that's been who I am ever since I was 3. When I was 4, I was diagnosed with leg perthes in my hips, which basically is like advanced arthritis in terms of the pain. And I was 4 years old, and I've had it ever since.
Oh,
And it's made it hard to be an actor in musical theater, which I started doing when I was younger, and now that I'm mostly doing film, it's still harder, but it held me back when I was in college, and I was punished for it at college for being disabled. And I was literally failed from classes for being disabled. Uh,
wow.
so it's I never stopped believing in myself though, and luckily my family does too, and my friends did. But if you have this feeling in you that says I'm meant for something great, you just it's insatiable. Like you cannot ignore it. And so yeah, every time I got knocked down, I was just like, let's get back up. There's no stopping.
Yeah, and
There's no
that
stopping.
perseverance has obviously led you to where you are today. And I think that every person deserves to feel like they are destined for something amazing. And the sad part is
Oh yeah.
in talking with so many of my queer friends that are now, let's say in their 60s, 70s, some early 80s,
Mhm.
and they say I reached a point where I wanted to exist in whatever comfortable place I
Sure.
could, which was making sure that I had food on my table. I
Mhm.
bought myself my small condo or whatever that was, and they took that kind of safe, easy road. And I always want to ask them and be like, what did you want to do before you took the safe road?
Sure.
Where did that happen? Because a lot of people do. A lot of people listen to outside voices saying that they're not enough, but every incredible, inspirational person that has made it, that has chased their dreams and can actually look at it and say, I did this,
Mhm.
has been told no a million times in their life
Yeah.
and they just don't stop. And that's why
You're
I
still being
want
told
queer
no all
people
the
to
time.
know that they can. Don't stop. Keep
Yeah.
going. Don't listen to the outside voices. Know that
Yeah.
you're worth it and keep
Right.
fucking doing it.
Right. And I think that's one thing I also want to stress on this, which is that as a queer plus size person, and just by the way, as I think also just as a plus size person in this industry, I'm not at a place where I'm done fighting at all.
Mhm.
And who knows if I will ever be, but it's all about perseverance in this business. Even though at this point I made one movie, that's not what I want to do. I don't want my legacy to be one movie.
Mhm.
So, and I also want my legacy to be more than just film, and more than just TV, more than just art. I want it to bleed through into everyone feeling valid and seen, and that this journey is not impossible.
Oh, I love that, Max. Honestly, you're such a beautiful person in everything that you do, but that's so important. And I love that drive. I'm not finished with just this. I'm not going to be finished with just that until it's something that really has an impact. Cause I feel the
Yeah,
same way. I've done so
yeah,
many random things that I never really saw starting a podcast, but then
yeah,
sitting down with all these people now and getting to meet you and now becoming
yeah,
friends with you, it's like I'm
yeah,
surrounded in the most beautiful individuals that I couldn't even have fathomed having around me last year when we were in the midst of everything and trying
yeah,
to organize what was going to be the next step for us and our businesses. But now
yeah,
everything falls in. You just got to keep going, one foot in front of
Gotta keep
another.
going.
Your movie
Yeah.
was your first step. You're going to keep
Yes.
going, and that's amazing. Let's
Thank you.
hear a tiny bit. So I don't want to talk too much about the movie because I've watched it, but why don't you
We
tell
won't we
everyone
won't
a
talk
little bit?
spoilers, but we can talk other things. Yes.
Yes, tell everybody a bit about the movie that you made, and if is there any tentative ideas of when maybe people will get to chime in and see it?
Well, it's hard to say because yeah, I know this is coming out in a few months. So in a few months there might be
Right.
because right now we're building that up. We're having those conversations and we're selling the movie. So we have
Yay!
we're actively working on it and with the right people, and it's an exciting time. So when you put this out, the answer is you might be able to put it in the caption and that'll be everything.
Amazing. Or just go
Um
Google it.
oh yeah, totally. Or on my Instagram, right? Your Instagram, like it'll be there. So
Yes, 100%. We'll both be
um
promoting it for sure.
yeah. So yeah, I think you just asked to talk about the movie, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a queer romantic comedy about two men with the same name. And it's really, like I said, it's a love story about how even if you ignore fate, fate has a way of pushing things into your life, even if it's a tornado of shit that you have to deal with to be successful in your life and relationships. So it was important to me to not only tell a queer story, but also tell a story about how horrifying and terrifying it is to fall in love and how it's such a leap of faith
Mm,
and how a lot of people choose to say no because
yeah.
of that. Especially in this millennial Gen Z younger generation part, I think we are so afraid of falling in love because so many relationships fail around us and we see it with our own two eyes, and we might not have been raised seeing healthy relationships, or even if we were. I mean, my parents are very happy together. That
Mhm,
actually has its own weird sort of pressure to kind of find that, to be like, oh, I can't settle for less than that.
mhm.
Uh, so it's that's what it was. It was a story about telling exactly how it feels to fall in love this age and at this moment in your life, and all the horrible shit that goes with it, honestly. Like, that's really what it is. It's like all the horrible, amazing, terrible stuff. Yeah, it's all that.
This movie is like, I can't. So, me and my partner, by the time all this airs, I'm assuming that me and my partner will be public with our relationship. But me and Cass watched this as like our date night movie. And
Mm.
I'm so grateful that you sent this to me and let me watch this. First of all, I felt so cool and exclusive watching a pre release movie, but also like the story
I'm
and
sorry the
just,
password didn't work.
oh no, honestly, it did. It was probably me. I'm
Okay,
fucking
okay,
shit
great.
with technology. But the story is so good. And the humor that it's like, I rarely burst out laughing at movies. I'm not like, I don't want to say I'm a hard egg to crack or something, but normally I can think something's funny, but it's
Sure.
almost like when you're texting and you're like,
Intellectually, like, it's
LOL,
funny,
I'm
but it's
laughing in my
yeah, yeah, yeah.
head. But I was bursting out laughing, tears in my eyes at some points. The humor is just so completely like understandable, but like offbeat, where it catches you in a moment that you're almost not even expecting it. And it makes it so much funnier. Like there's a part where you throw a box, and I won't give too much away, but just that scene, I was hysterically laughing at that
Thank you.
moment because it's so relatable, and it's so humanizing to watch. And then everything that's in the movie is just, it's so, any person can sit down and watch that and take something away and
Mm,
feel like they have gotten to witness a piece of themselves in the movie, no matter who you are. I guarantee that that will happen for every single person. And I can't wait to see how this movie takes off because
thank
honestly,
you.
it's one of the best movies I've ever seen. I had so much fun with it. And with me and Cass's love story, I haven't talked about it very much on the podcast. We were friends for 17 years, and it took
Yeah.
us that long to look at each other and think that this could be my person. And that was like that story of fate that we were watching, where it was just, we had been friends. My partner was married at one point
Yeah.
and in a band with his ex, and I was with another partner, and we were just cheering each other on. Like we thought it was amazing. I
Sure.
thought that was that person. He thought I had found mine.
Yeah.
when they split and we started our companies, again, it was just, I'm starting a company with my best friend. I wasn't, neither
Yeah.
one of us was thinking that we were going to fall in love. And
Totally.
then all of a sudden, it just like, I think it hit me first, but it was like a ton of bricks. And it was like the
Yeah.
universe finally just had to take me and like smack me, like, Court,
Yeah.
he's
You're
right
like,
in
you
front of
cannot
you.
ignore that.
Yeah,
Exactly. Cannot
100%.
ignore that.
And then Cass kind of
Um,
had a moment where he was like, I need to like sit with this and take a step back, and had his little moment of freak out of like, what does that
yeah.
mean? We're such good friends. I don't want to lose all of this.
Yeah.
If we pursue that and something happens, like we live together, we have companies together. There were things. We have 17 years of incredible friendship that
Yeah.
we didn't want to risk. So yeah, falling in love can be terrifying, but this is, I've never loved, and I've never felt as loved as I do by him. I've never been this happy in a
Yeah.
relationship. I've never felt more valued and loved and respected and seen and heard. Like,
Yeah.
you got to just take that leap, because
You really do. You
when it's there,
really
it's there.
do. And that's, by the way, that's such a beautiful story and a movie in itself. So
Oh,
he needs to be
hey, well, if
made.
you
Okay.
ever want to, give me a
No,
call.
I will. I will. But the other thing I was going to say, which is I fell in love after writing this movie. And I've been with my boyfriend for 3 years now. And what I was going to say was that the falling in love part was terrifying.
Mhm.
It was really scary. And it was interesting because my roommate was falling in love with one of my now best friends at the time as well. And her and I were already close friends. I introduced them. And
Aw.
so I was sitting in her room at her house where she was living at the time. And I was talking about like how scared I was. And she was also talking about how scared she was. But then she like turned to me and she was like, what if we just let ourselves? And it was like, let ourselves forget everything else and just say, like, what the hell? Like, let's dive in, right? Let's give this a try. And when you stopped, or when I stopped, second guessing every moment,
Mhm.
which by the way, I still do a lot of the time, but like 3 years in, I'm still reacting to texts or like, oh, how was that conversation? Obviously, the stakes are a little less high when you know that you have the ability to have those conversations when you meet.
Mhm.
But
I sorted through trauma. I mean, that's
yeah,
part of, me and
yeah,
Cass have both had trauma in past relationships.
yeah,
We're aware of it. We continuously are conscious in our mind of triggers for each other, or
yeah,
things that could impact. With my family and my upbringing, I have a fear of abandonment.
mhm,
Um, and that's something that he's so aware of. And every day he reminds me that I'm loved and
yeah,
he's not going anywhere and we're a team. And
yeah,
this is how he can show up for me.
yeah,
And we talk all day. And we had, I think I mentioned in another episode, or it'll be in another episode. We
mhm,
had some internalized transphobia as trans people that we
yeah,
had to work through, because what did it mean for us to date a trans person when you're in transition to another binary, male to female, female to male, and you're dating a cis person? For some reason, for me personally, I'll just speak to me, there was a validation in dating a cis male on my female identity, which was so toxic. And I for some reason had never looked at what dating a trans man would mean to me,
sure,
or what that means to my own identity and
yeah,
how I show up. And so
yeah,
we both had to sit down and work that out. He had never dated a trans woman. I had never dated a trans man.
yeah,
And I mean, really now looking a few months into this, there is absolutely no fucking difference at all. I
yeah,
still am on him to make appointments. His mom
yeah,
messages me if they need to get a hold of him. I
yeah,
bring snacks because he gets hangry. Like,
yeah,
there is nothing, but for some
right,
reason, I think there is internalized transphobia even in trans people, in some of the
yeah,
ways that we're raised, or we seek validation or outside validation, and it's
totally,
negative.
right. And I think that is adding to that. That is the only way that I related in the movie or made it a specifically queer experience, in my opinion, was that the internalized homophobia rears its ugly head in both
Mhm.
certain ways.
Mhm.
And I think as queer people, I I hope that these next generations do not have the same sort of trauma and what, like we're saying, internalized phobias that we have, because I think I've had moments where I judge myself for dating, or not judge myself, but like think, what does it mean to date a less masculine man? Does that make me less of a, it doesn't fucking matter. Who am I
Hmm.
in love with? Like, who am I in love with? At the end of the day, what is anything else? Uh,
Totally.
and so that's the other part. I think when we also stop labeling everything, it will open up that to the point where the traumas and the phobias aren't the same. Because right now we have so much language to describe those phobias, and hopefully that's the only kind of language I hope goes away,
Right?
with freedom to express ourselves earlier and less of a need to label ourselves.
Totally. And I think labeling is something it's just constantly there. And then you're
Yeah,
constantly trying to find out which box you fit in. And if
yeah,
you feel like you're not fitting in one, especially for non-binary people,
yeah,
I think that having a non-binary label is freeing in a lot of ways. But
sure.
again, it's another label that
Yeah,
is used to help other people understand you.
yeah,
And it shouldn't be necessary. Like if somebody wants to go by they them, or if somebody is gender fluid and wants to present male one day or
mhm,
female the next, or whatever that is, like I think that having all of these labels and queer identity needing to be understood by the
yeah,
cis hetero community
yeah,
is a problem. Whatever somebody wants to do with their life, whatever their identity is, whatever their sexuality, whoever they fall in love with, is their business. And you're seeing
right,
it more and more, thank God, in Hollywood.
yeah,
You look at Chriselle and G Flip and their love story, and how
oh yeah,
that media was finally, for the first time, celebrating a love story that was
oh
worth
yeah,
celebrating,
yeah,
rather than, and I not to say they obviously didn't have quite a bit of throwback from just coming out on basically national television, but I
yeah,
think that there was a beauty in the way that it was received, and there was a beauty in the way that it was understood with language,
yeah,
and people were respectful of G Flip's identity on the show, besides Mary Lou, who,
mhm,
I mean, that whole conversation, anyways.
yeah,
But you see that there's a more grounded understanding in individuals.
yeah,
And that's kind of where we need to be going, is it doesn't matter. Just let somebody love who they love. Did they
totally,
treat them well? Do they
yeah.
show up for them? Do they respect them? Do they care about them?
Well, actually,
And
that leads me to a beautiful conversation. So early in my relationship, my best friend was with me and my family. And my best friend asked my dad, he's like, "Do you have any questions about like Max's boyfriend?" My dad just goes, "Does he make him happy and does he treat him well?" And my best friend was like, "Yes." And my dad was like, "That's all I care about." And I just, once again, like, completely the right thing to say without him knowing the right thing to say.
mhm,
Right? Like he wasn't thinking like, what should I say in this situation to be okay? He was thinking, what matters to me as a parent for my son?
I love your
He's
parents. Can you tell your
loved.
parents I said hi? I
I
love
will, I
them.
will. Yeah, they're great. I'm very lucky. Yeah, no, they're awesome. But yeah,
Oh,
that's all that mattered. And I'm so grateful about that. Yeah.
so you wrote the movie and then met
Mhm.
your partner. Were you already in filming when you met your partner, or was filming an
No, no,
aspect?
no. I met him a year or so before filming. And yeah, the falling in love part was pre-filming. And then being in love was just the last 3 years of my life. And
Oh,
forward, hopefully.
congratulations. But
Thank
do you
you.
think it impacted how you were portraying the role in the movie, because it was something that you were
Oh, yeah.
actually experiencing, basically, like,
Oh, yeah.
in
Yeah.
real time?
Yeah, I've said this. I don't think it impacted me as a writer and director as much as an actor,
Mhm.
because you're right. I was experiencing these things in real time. I was having these anxieties and fears before going in. It was basically like doing, this is a funny way to say, but like doing months of prep and rehearsal for this role.
Yeah.
And then obviously I'm just lucky that it's part of my life now. But yeah, it felt like that. It felt like I was learning all of these ways that this character would feel because I was feeling them at the time. And it was really lucky and beautiful. And yeah, you're totally right. It impacted that in massive ways.
And I love the story and how I'm trying not to give away too much, but just
Yeah.
the story of one of the main characters kind of going from partner to partner. I think in the queer world, I've had so many of my beautiful plus size gay male friends that are on Grinder and feel extremely discriminated against or
Yeah.
have really awful messages and slurs. And when you see one of my friends got into a relationship and the first year, even though their partner was very healthy and supportive and incredibly aware of their trauma and triggers, my friend still struggled
Oh
really,
yeah.
really hard to feel like they were even worthy of the love that they were being
Totally.
given by that person. Was
Yeah.
that something, because I feel like that came out so beautifully
I'm just
in
wondering if you're describing my 20s. But are you talking about me?
No, but
um
this is the problem is that there
yeah.
that is something that is
Oh totally.
normal in the queer
Yeah.
community, and discrimination,
Yeah.
especially on that
Oh
app,
yeah. I mean,
is
people,
toxic.
I remember I would message someone and they'd be like, dream on. Like literally message me that or just be like, in what world are we in the same league? That kind of thing. And I would always be like, fuck you. Like I would literally say
Yeah,
that before I left because
good for you.
who are you? Like, I
I
mean,
will
who are
message
you?
them.
Like,
I will tell them to
yeah, like who are you? Screw you. Like you do not get to make me feel inferior to you. But no, I Grinder, I hope it's become a less toxic place in the last 3 years. I'm unaware. I'm not there. But it was obviously it's, messages and just that fear bled into, you're right, everything else. Anytime I would try to start a relationship, it was just in my mind that I wasn't good enough for whoever I was dating. And I'm not like my partner is not a plus size person. And in my past relationships, most of them have not been with plus size people. And that actually has brought in, I think, more insecurities into me not feeling enough to be with someone who's not plus size, which is such bullshit. At the end of the day, you love who you love. You fall in love with who you fall in love with. And these people fell in love with. I shouldn't be questioning that, but I should be questioning why I'm questioning it. Right? Like
Totally.
who what was said to me? What were the experiences I had that at this moment are making me feel like this person standing in front of me telling me that they love me? Why don't I believe you? Right? Where does that come from? And luckily my boyfriend is so good, like making me feel loved or make me know I'm loved. I don't want to say make me feel loved because I am loved. And it goes beyond big things and into just little things. And those are the things that through the years have made me not question it anymore. And I'm grateful to have found someone who makes me feel that way. Uh, and I just like, it sucks that I ever didn't feel that way and that plus size people don't feel that way. And by the way, this goes beyond plus size people. Anyone who is not this 6 foot to 6'4", or just a very specific, I'm going to try to explain this as well as I can. It's shocking to me the level of homophobia, hatred, and just general blatant judginess that exists in the queer world.
Mhm.
Is there any reason why we should not treat each other with love? Any reason? If someone messaged me, and let's say that someone, when I was in my 20s in New York on these dating apps, if someone messaged me and they were 40 years older than me, right? At the end of the day, I might not be interested in them sexually, relationship wise, partner wise, but I didn't say like, I'm out of your league or I'm way too young for you. Okay, Graham. Right? Like those types of things,
Totally.
which are language that were used similar to me in like a plus size way,
Mhm.
are so hurtful to someone.
Mm.
So I would just always say like, hey, like, listen, I wish you the best. I'm not looking for anything this night or that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Make it known that even if I didn't want to start a conversation, they deserve love. Someone's going to love them and someone should love them.
Totally. Or
And
you know what?
yeah.
Kindness can also be in quiet. We
Oh, yeah.
don't need to, like, I think that was one thing for me when my Instagram first started to kind of pop off. I was getting all of these DMs
Uh-huh.
from like tranny chasers. And I would try and be respectful and be like, "Hi, I have a partner. Thanks so much for the
Oh,
follow.
yeah.
All the best." And then all of a sudden it's like, "Well, you're a fucking man and you'll never be a woman and blah blah." And I'm like, "Okay." Like
Yeah.
there can also be kindness in silence. If you don't have interest in somebody, especially within the app, a quiet answer,
Yeah.
which is no answer at all,
Yeah.
sometimes can go a long way. And then if
I
the
don't
person's
I don't
constantly
disagree with that.
harassing you, just block them. Like we
Oh,
don't
yeah.
need to get into
1,000%. If it goes beyond that, I would block. In fact, most of the time I would message and then block anyway. Because
Mhm.
I would be like, here's my truth. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Right? But you're right. I also think, by the way, I just hit myself in the face with my string.
Oh,
Good. Don't worry, I'm good. But
are you okay?
I'm totally fine. It's literally a string. I'm good. Also think that
Things are deadly for your eyes, by the way. Sorry, that's why I
they are.
asked. I've gotten one in my eye that had a metal clip on it once, and
Oh,
it,
yeah, this one has a metal clip
yeah, it
because
was not
it's
nice.
like it's polo, so it's like one of the nicer hoodies I have. Very comfy.
And it's a beautiful hoodie. And also, I just wanted to quickly say before we go into another segue, but you are an incredibly handsome and beautiful person
Yeah.
inside and out. And I'm so grateful that you are vulnerable and you share what you do, especially with the struggles, because it's important. But I think it's also just important for you to know that you are such a fantastic person. The character that you portrayed here is so wonderful. And it's so joyous to watch the evolution of both of them and that love story. And to know that it was something that you were going through too is just like, it just makes it even more emotional. And
Thank you.
it's
I
wonderful to
really
know that you deserve that love because you do.
thank you. And that means so much to me. Thank you. And I wouldn't have made the movie if I have felt that way since the day I was born, and I'm lucky because of it. And even when I was getting these messages, once again, it didn't I've never been someone who will, at the end of the day, let how someone else feels about me, uh, what's how someone else feels about me, what's the word? Like, impact how I feel about myself, right?
Mhm.
Because
Yes.
I know who I am. I'm lucky I know who I am. Maybe I didn't at 21, by the way, because, like, there's a few years there where I definitely was, like, finding who I am, but
Totally.
no,
I was still
I
presenting male at 21. If you're 21 years old listening to this and you feel like you
yeah,
don't have it figured out, it's fucking
yeah.
fine.
Oh, totally. I moved to New York when I was 21, and I was a shit show.
Mhm.
It's a period in my life, like the dark period, right? Like, I don't need to go into what was happening, but, like, yeah, you mentioned if I have experience with Grinder.
Simba, that's a place you never go to.
Exactly, literally, like, never again. But now I forget what I was saying. I appreciate what you said, and yeah, it means so much, and I think hopefully other plus size queer people and also just plus size people will see this movie and know they are loved, know they are valid, and that they deserve best relationship ever.
I love
So,
that.
yeah.
So to any young, queer, plus size individuals that are listening to this podcast right now and don't know where to get started or could use some motivation or want to be working in film, what is your advice to them today?
My number one advice to not just queer people, but anyone who is entering the entertainment industry is trust your instincts every single time. I have never been wrong about my gut feeling about a situation, someone who's asking to work with me, someone who's not asking to work with me. Like, I have only been burned by myself when I didn't trust my instincts. So the number one thing is trust your instincts. The number two thing I would say is what I've said before, which is that if you believe in yourself, that's what matters. If you know your worth, if exactly what you bring to the table and how special that is, that's what matters. You do not need to listen to the outside voices who are telling you how to conform, how to do what you're doing. A few years ago, I actually had a rep who I felt was encouraging me to almost be a queer version of myself that isn't me,
Mm.
right? By going into a version that wasn't authentic for different reasons than I have felt in the past. But I should have trusted my judgment on that wasn't who I am and what I'm comfortable um being, because it wasn't.
Mhm.
And I should have trusted myself earlier. And yeah, I think trust your instincts. And once again, that it's biggest with who you're working with.
Mhm.
Work with the right people, vet them in your mind, like and actually vet them, do your background checks.
Mhm.
But also, this is gonna sound negative, but it isn't. But assume it's a no until it's a yes. And the
Totally.
only reason I say that is don't go and hear someone say yes to you, and it's not in writing, it's not in anything like that, and believe it's an actual yes. Until it is in front of you and it's real, it's not.
Mhm. The same as sales.
Yeah.
Always assume that it's not closed until
Yep.
you have the paperwork signed and the money's
Yep.
there.
Exactly.
Same
Other than
thing.
that, it doesn't exist.
Yep.
Number 3 is you've gotta be a fighter. And like that doesn't mean that you can't have moments of I don't want to say weakness, because it's not weakness, but moments of it's almost self-care to allow yourself to
Totally.
do something.
Being present in your
Oh yeah.
emotions, allowing
Yeah.
yourself to feel disappointed, allowing yourself
Yes.
to feel
That
sad
is
that something you worked
exactly
on isn't
it.
coming to
Yes.
fruition.
Exactly. And the last thing I would say is love yourself. Just love every part of you. And that's like, I mean, I know it's cliche now that RuPaul says that every week, right? Like, if you love yourself, how the hell are you going to love somebody else? But like,
It's true.
there's a reason why that saying has stuck through every iteration of that franchise. And it's because it's exactly true. And as queer people, it's more true than anything else.
100%. And also getting the no when
Yeah.
you do love yourself. Like I worked in film and I
Yeah.
had lots of no's from auditions.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes because I was queer, I almost took it more personally because I was
Yeah.
like, this is a no because of me and my identity or because I'm not presenting feminine enough or blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And so I took on a lot of that mentally. But when you are at peace and when you love yourself and you hear that no, you're like, okay, great. That was not
Yeah.
meant for me. Whatever
Yeah.
is meant for me will never pass me. I'm,
Yeah.
grateful for the opportunity. Make sure you nurture those contacts. Never be somebody that gets a no and then gets pissy because if you
Mhm.
leave a lasting image in someone's mind, maybe it's a no for that role. And maybe they have somebody better for that role. It's not meant for you, but they have something in the next 12 months that's coming up where they go, you know what, this role would really suit that person.
Exactly.
Always make sure that
1,000%.
you're respectful.
There has been for every person in this industry who has made it, they have gotten a role that was added to them or given to them by the casting director in something much later. You're right, 1,000%. There was a casting director in New York who I auditioned for, like, literally for months in a row. They would bring me in every single week, even though I knew a lot of the stuff they were bringing in for me I wouldn't get. And they did that almost as a favor to me to get me in front of every comedy creative in New York. And it ended with me booking Search Party and getting to work with people who I was dreaming about working with at the time. And it only takes, my point is, it only takes one person to believe in you to then everything starts, right?
Totally.
But that starts also with you believing in yourself.
And sometimes
Self-love
that
part.
that comes at a window. You see a door, it's locked. You see this, it's locked. You see
Right.
this, it's locked. You're trying
Yeah.
everywhere, and all of a sudden a window opens, and something that was so small that you may not have thought was something so big ends up snowballing into something that's destined for your future and for you as a person.
Yeah.
You have to keep going. Resilience is key in every aspect of life. But as queer people, we have to be
Yeah.
resilient in ways that nobody else understands.
Totally.
And I think that it's the one thing I can take in gratitude for all of the
Yeah.
discrimination that I've come up against is the resilience that it made it really easy to hear the
Yeah.
no's and to keep going.
Absolutely. And then I have 3 other things to say with this specifically.
Do it.
And these are advice to actors everywhere. This is not just for plus size people, for queer people. This is just advice. Number one, study your face in the mirror. Because when you're on a camera, you have no clue what it looks like. So you have to know what your facial expressions look like. I think that's especially important for comedy, but I think overall it's extremely important. Number two, as an actor, sometimes you're going to have to model. So study models. Literally study photo shoots. My trick, and this is going to be controversial, but I don't care. I grew up in the early mid 2000s, is I watch America's Next Top Model to learn how to model. And it has helped me in every photo shoot, every carpet, everything I've ever done, because I know my angles, I know my face. Like it's, and as a plus size person, I think that is important, more so for me. Like I want to know I like it. I'm sorry. I need to know I like the picture. I'm sorry, it's vain, okay? I am an actor at the end of the day. It's gonna come down to this. Sometimes I have to remind my PR people because, like, I can seem like, so I'm a creator, I'm all this stuff, but I sometimes will have to be like, guys, I'm an actor. I will need you to reassure me in certain ways. I'm an actor first. I have actor brain. Okay, it's just how it is. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You were deceived. That's who I am. But so that's my other thing, because I know if you're watching this, you're gonna have actor brain as well. So, and the last thing I was gonna say was, as a creator and as a producer and director, I will always make sure to have an open channel for new scripts and creatives. So right now it's info@malibubropro.com, and whoever's watching this, if you have a script, if you have a pitch idea, whatever, send it our way. We're actively looking for the next things to be working at this time. We're building up certain projects, but that doesn't mean that we're not looking for more. And also, we're lucky that we're able to have a conversation. So please, we're looking for those voices. We always, our goal is to make projects by underrepresented voices. So please, if that is you, send it.
Say the email one more time.
info@malibubropro.com.
Love it. And I feel like that's a lovely place for us to end this. Max, I'm so grateful to you and everything that you do. I can't wait for everyone to see this movie. Things like this, TBD. But if you're not following me and Max, follow both, because we'll make sure that there's promotions when this movie is finally launched on where to watch it, because it's going to take over 100%.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Max.
So glad to not only be here, but also have this new friendship. So thank you.
Totally. 100%. Honestly, it's a privilege to call you my friend. And I can't wait to see what's on the horizon next.
Thank you so much.
All right, folks, that wraps up today's episode of The Braveyard. A massive thank you to Max for coming on and sharing so vulnerably and talking about his experience. He is the epitome of a trailblazer, and I'm so excited to have been able to share his story. I hope that people take away from this. He's so incredibly talented, and I think his story is such an inspiration, not just for queer people or people that are plus size, but for everybody. If you're finding that there isn't a seat at the table, make one for yourself. Don't let anything stop you. The only obstacle in your way is yourself. Next time, we have another really exciting guest coming on. We have Matt Safara coming on, and I can't wait to share more about that conversation. But for now, I'm Courtnei Lee, and this is The Braveyard.